Commander Han Ta-1 gripped the controls of his spacecraft as warning lights flashed across the command console. The engine failure alarm screamed in his ears, and the ship's AI calmly announced what he already knew. Crash landing was now inevitable. Structural integrity at 40%, the emotionless voice stated. Recommend Emergency Protocol 7. Tai-1's mouth felt dry as he initiated the landing sequence. He was the first human scout to venture this far into uncharted space, and now he might be the first to die here. The small reconnaissance vessel shuddered violently as it entered the atmosphere of the unknown planet. "Come on, hold together," he muttered, fighting to maintain some control over the dying craft. Through the viewscreen, he watched the planet's surface rushing toward him. Vast oceans of purple-blue, landmasses of deep amber, and swirling cloud formations unlike anything on Earth. If he survived, the data alone would be priceless to the United Earth Command. The ship's heat shields glowed red-hot as friction turned the vessel into a blazing meteor. Tai-1 activated his survival suit, the smart fabric tightening around his body. If the crash didn't kill him outright, the suit might keep him alive long enough to establish contact with Earth, if Earth could even receive a signal from this far away. His final descent was a blur of alarms, spinning instrumentation, and desperate attempts to aim for what looked like a clearing. The spacecraft smashed through a canopy of tall, silver-trunked trees before skidding across an open area, tearing up the ground and strange plants as it went. Metal screamed against Earth, and Tai-1's head slammed against his restraints before everything went momentarily black. When his eyes flickered open, smoke filled the cockpit. The commander undid his safety harness with shaking hands and crawled toward the emergency hatch. The door was jammed, but a well-placed kick forced it open. Tai-1 tumbled out onto the alien soil, coughing and gasping for breath. The air was breathable. His suit's sensors confirmed this immediately, but had a strange, sweet smell that reminded him of cinnamon and ozone. As the smoke cleared from his lungs, Tai-1 finally had a chance to look around. He had crashed into what appeared to be a garden, but unlike any garden on Earth, this one glowed. Plants of all shapes emitted soft light in blues, purples, and greens. Some pulsed slowly, like heartbeats. Others maintained a steady glow. His crash had carved a destructive path through this beautiful place, leaving broken and dimming plants in his wake. Earth Command. He tried his communicator. This is Scout Commander Han Ta-1. Emergency landing on unidentified planet. Coordinates unknown. Ship status critical. Request immediate. The sound of movement interrupted his transmission. Tai-1 turned quickly, his hand instinctively moving to the emergency blade at his hip. What he saw made him freeze in place. Standing about 30 meters away was a humanoid figure, but clearly not human. The being was tall and slender, with skin that had a faint lavender hue and seemed to reflect light like polished marble. Most striking were the 4 eyes, 2 large ones positioned like human eyes, and 2 smaller ones above them, all 4 a deep violet color with vertical pupils that were now widening in what Tai-1 recognized as shock. The being wore elaborate clothing that seemed to flow like liquid, changing colors slightly with each movement. A complex arrangement of metallic objects floated around its head in what appeared to be a crown or headdress, but with no visible means of support. For a long moment, neither moved. Then the alien being made a gesture with its hand, and the air rippled. Suddenly, from hidden locations throughout the garden, emerged guards. At least, Tai-1 assumed they were guards based on their uniformity and the weapons they carried, long, transparent crystalline spears that hummed with energy. "Don't shoot," Tai-1 said instinctively, raising his hand slowly. "I'm peaceful. This was an accident." The guards surrounded him, their weapons pointed at his chest. One made a series of musical sounds, presumably speaking to him, but Tai-1's translator couldn't process the language. His survival suit recorded everything, searching for patterns to begin translation. The first being, the one with the floating crown, approached cautiously. As it drew closer, Taiwan realized the being was female, or at least appeared so by human standards. She studied him with obvious curiosity, her head tilting slightly. She spoke, and her voice was like chimes in the wind. Then she raised her hand, revealing a small device on her wrist. She touched it and spoke again. "Stop," the device translated in a mechanical approximation of her melodious voice. "This being comes from beyond our world." Taiwan's eyes widened. "You have translation technology," he said, his excitement momentarily overriding his fear. The device on her wrist hummed, struggling to process his words. The four-eyed being watched him intently, then looked at the crashed ship, then back to him. "I come in peace," Taiwan said slowly, keeping his hands visible. "My ship malfunctioned. I didn't mean to land here." The translation seemed incomplete, but the alien female raised her hand toward the guards, who lowered their weapons slightly but remained alert. She approached closer, now just a few feet away from Taiwan. He could see the intricate patterns in her iris, all four of them, and the way her skin seemed to have subtle luminescence similar to the plants around them. "I am Princess Jin Yunji of the Velaran High Court," the translation finally processed. "You are not Velaran." "No," Taiwan confirmed, allowing himself to breathe more easily. "I am human from a planet called Earth, very far from here." The princess circled him slowly, her fascination evident. The guards remained tense, but followed her lead. "We believed ourselves alone," she said, her translator struggling with the concept. "The only minds among the stars." Tae-Won smiled cautiously. "There are many minds among the stars, Princess. My people have met several already." This statement caused a ripple of musical sounds among the guards, perhaps alarm or disbelief. The princess's four eyes blinked in sequence, from bottom to top, and she reached out a six-fingered hand toward him, stopping just short of touching his face. "You are real," she whispered, the translator capturing her wonder. The prophecies spoke of visitors from beyond, but none believed. For the first time since the crash, Taiwan felt hope rising. This wasn't a hostile reception. It was one of amazement. He had become humanity's first ambassador to this world through sheer accident. "I have much to tell you about where I come from," he said gently, "and much to learn about your world." Princess Yunji's lips formed what might have been a smile, and she gestured toward an enormous crystal structure visible in the distance. "Come then, star traveler," she said. "The Velaran people await their first contact with the universe beyond." Princess Yunji held the small metal device in her six-fingered hands, turning it carefully to examine every angle. The quantum communicator glowed softly with blue light, its holographic display showing Earth symbols that floated above the surface. "Your technology is primitive, yet effective," she said, her four eyes blinking in sequence as she focused on different components. The translation device at her wrist had improved greatly in the 2 weeks since Commander Han Tawan's arrival, now capturing the musical tones of her language with reasonable accuracy. Tae-Won sat across from her in the royal study, a vast room with walls that seemed to shift colors based on the princess's mood. Currently, they glowed a curious yellow-green that he had come to associate with her intellectual interest. "And your biological interfaces are beyond anything we've developed," he replied, watching as she absent-mindedly waved her hand through the air. Immediately, the room's lighting adjusted, and a holographic display of the planet Thalora appeared beside them. What amazed Taiwan was that she hadn't touched anything. The Velarans had developed technology that responded directly to their thoughts, with subtle hand movements serving only as physical anchors for their mental commands. "Show me the human solar system again," she requested. Tae-Won nodded and activated his portable star chart. A three-dimensional map of Earth's solar system materialized between them, planets slowly orbiting the sun. "Only 8 planets," Princess Yunji observed. "We have 17 in our system, though only 3 support life." The princess's decision to designate Taiwan an official guest rather than prisoner had caused considerable controversy among the royal council. He had been given comfortable quarters in the east wing of the Crystal Palace, with a view of the twin moons that orbited Velora. Each day, under the princess's personal supervision, they exchanged knowledge: human mathematics for Veloran medicine, Earth history for stellar cartography. "Your numerical system is fascinating," Yunji said, pointing to the equations Taiwan had written. "Base 10. We use base 16, which better matches our 16 fingers." She splayed her hands, showing the 8 digits on each that allowed Veloran's remarkable dexterity. "May I?" Taiwan asked, reaching toward one of the Veloran texts that floated nearby. The princess nodded, and he carefully took the strange book. Unlike Earth books, these were made of thin crystal sheets that changed content based on the reader's touch. Taiwan had been studying the Veloran written language, a complex system of circular symbols that interconnected like chains. "You've almost mastered our basic writing system," Yunji noted with surprise as she watched him read. "It usually takes young Velorans 3 cycles to achieve that level. Your species adapts quickly," she added, her secondary eyes narrowing slightly in what Taiwan had learned was an expression of impressed surprise. "Survival requires flexibility," he answered with a smile, not mentioning his military training or the detailed reports he mentally composed for Earth Command each night. If he ever re-established contact with humanity, the knowledge of Veloran technology alone would advance Earth sciences by centuries. A soft chiming sound interrupted their session. The princess touched her wrist communicator and spoke briefly in her native language, too quickly for Taiwan's translator to catch. "The Royal Council requests my presence," she explained, rising gracefully. Her flowing garments, which seemed to be partly living material, adjusted to her movement. "Please continue your studies. I've authorized access to the historical archives for you." After she left, Taiwan moved to the large window overlooking the capital city. The Veloran metropolis was unlike any human city. Buildings grew rather than were built, shaped from living crystal that was somehow cultivated from the planet's crust. Pathways of light connected structures, with Velorans moving along them in floating transports that required no visible propulsion system. "Incredible," he whispered, making notes on his datapad. His survival suit had been repaired by Veloran technicians who had been fascinated by its relatively simple technology. They had even enhanced some of its functions, though Taiwan was careful about which improvements he accepted. Unknown to Taiwan, he was being observed. In a shadowed alcove connected to the royal study through a hidden passage, Lord Kang Do-hyun watched the human with narrowed eyes. As second minister to the Royal Council and commander of the Planetary Defense Forces, Do-hyun had strongly opposed allowing the alien free movement within the palace. "He examines everything, records everything," Do-hyun whispered to his aide, "like a scout preparing for invasion." "The princess believes his crash was accidental," the aide replied cautiously. "The princess is young and naive," Do-hyun said. "For 50,000 cycles, we have kept ourselves hidden from the stars, for good reason. The ancient texts speak of the dangers beyond our world." Do-hyun's outer robe, signifying his high rank, shimmered with deep crimson energy, a visible sign of his agitation. Unlike the princess, who found the human fascinating, Do-hyun saw only threat. Change threatened power, and Do-hyun had accumulated much power over his long life. "What will you do, Lord Minister?" the aide asked. "Watch, listen, and prepare," Do-hyun answered. "The human claims to be alone, yet speaks of a vast civilization beyond our stars. What if others come? What if they are not also diplomatic?" Back in the study, Taiwan had discovered something remarkable in the archives: ancient Veloran star charts showing what appeared to be planned exploration routes to nearby systems, including one that might have been Earth's sun. But the charts were thousands of years old, and it seemed the missions had never launched. When Princess Yunji returned hours later, she found Taiwan surrounded by historical holographic displays. "You were spacefarers once," he said without preamble. "What happened? Why did your people abandon the stars?" The princess's skin paled slightly, its luminescence dimming. "The Great Calamity," she said quietly. "It is not a pleasant historical period to discuss." Tae-Won stood respectfully. "I apologize if I touched on a sensitive subject." "No," she said, her 4 eyes blinking in rapid succession, a sign of deep thought. "You deserve to know. It might explain why my council fears you." She waved her hand, and the room darkened. A new holographic image appeared, a vast armada of ships unlike the crystal vessels Tae-Won had seen in the Valoran harbor. 10,000 cycles ago, our ancestors reached for the stars, she explained. They built great ships and sent explorers to nearby systems. Then they encountered something that followed them back. The hologram showed darkness spreading across Valoran cities, buildings crumbling, people fleeing. "The records are incomplete," Princess Yenji continued, "but whatever came from the stars nearly destroyed our civilization. When it was finally defeated, our ancestors took a solemn vow to turn inward, to develop defensively, to hide our world from the cosmos." Tae-Won felt a chill. "And then I arrived." The princess's expression softened. "Yes, the first visitor from beyond in 10,000 cycles. You can understand why some fear what your arrival might herald." "I assure you, Earth has no hostile intentions," Tae-Won said earnestly. "I believe you," Princess Yenji replied. "But Lord Do-hyun and others remember the old warnings. They see your crash as the beginning of a new calamity." From his hidden observation point, Lord Do-hyun watched this exchange with growing alarm. The princess was sharing too much, trusting too easily. He touched a crystal communication device at his throat. "Increase surveillance on the human," he whispered, "and prepare the ancient defenses. If more of his kind appear in our skies, we must be ready." As twilight fell over the crystal city, Tae-Won and Princess Yenji continued their cultural exchange, neither fully aware of the growing tension their friendship was creating, or the ancient forces that his arrival might have awakened deep beneath Valora's surface, where the remnants of the first calamity had never truly been destroyed, merely contained. The great hall of the Crystal Palace fell silent as General Park Sun-ho entered. His normally pristine uniform showed signs of battle, scorch marks on the ceremonial armor, and a thin cut across his face that leaked purple blood. The general moved with stiff dignity to the center of the circular chamber where the royal council gathered. "The Morthex swarms approach our outer colonies," he announced, his voice echoing through the hall. 3 settlements lost already." Murmurs of alarm spread through the assembled court officials. The crystalline walls of the chamber pulsed with anxious red light, reflecting the collective mood of the Valorans present. Princess Yenji sat on the floating throne at the head of the council circle, her 4 eyes narrowed in concentration. She wore the formal regalia of war, the living armor that shifted and moved with her, protecting vital areas while enhancing her natural abilities. "Show us," she commanded. General Sun-ho raised his hand, activating the central holographic display. A 3-dimensional map of the Valoran system appeared, with red markers indicating the advancing Morthex forces. "They broke through our outer defense grid at 3 points simultaneously," the general explained, pointing to the breaches. "Their attack pattern was unexpected, more coordinated than previous encounters." Tae-Won stood quietly at the edge of the chamber. For the past month, he had been permitted to observe Valoran governance, though rarely allowed to participate. He studied the holographic display with professional interest, noting the movement patterns of the enemy forces. The Morthex, a collective intelligent species that resembled Earth insects, but at a much larger scale, had been a sporadic threat to Valora for centuries. Until now, their attacks had been manageable, almost routine. Princess Yenji suddenly turned toward Tae-Won. "You have military experience. What do you observe?" The chamber fell silent again, this time with tension. Lord Do-hyun, who stood at the princess's right hand, frowned deeply. "Your Highness, the human has no place in military discussions," Do-hyun protested. I value all perspectives, the princess replied firmly. She gestured for Taiwan to approach the central display. Taiwan moved forward cautiously, aware of the hostile stares from many council members. He studied the battle projections for a moment before speaking. Your defensive formations are predictable, he said finally. You position your forces in the same geometric patterns for each engagement. The Morthex adapt to patterns. General Sun Ho's face darkened. Our formations are based on thousands of years of tactical development. And they worked against an enemy that attacked randomly, Taiwan acknowledged. But look here and here. He pointed to 2 breach points. The Morthex aren't attacking randomly anymore. They're targeting the weak points in your standard formations. The general studied the display with new eyes. By the ancestors, he's right. What would humans do? Princess Yenji asked, ignoring the outraged whispers that rippled through the chamber. Taiwan was about to answer when a high-pitched alarm blared throughout the palace. The holographic display flickered and changed, showing a new object entering Velarin space, a ship, but not Morthex in design. With a jolt, Taiwan recognized the configuration. That's an Earth vessel, he said, his heart racing. It's a UEC Pathfinder-class rescue ship. Impossible. Lord Du-hyun shouted. How would they find this world? Taiwan's hand moved to his survival suit, understanding dawning. My emergency beacon must have activated automatically. The crash damage must have triggered it on a delay. He looked up at the princess. They're coming for me. They aren't invaders. The Velarin defense minister stepped forward. Our planetary shields are activating. Defense platforms are locking onto the alien vessel. No, Taiwan exclaimed. They're not hostile. If you fire on them, they'll assume I'm being held prisoner. Please, let me communicate with them. Lord Du-hyun moved to stand between Taiwan and the princess. Lies, he shouted, his face contorted with anger. This was his plan all along. First he crashes here, learns our defenses, and now his people arrive just as the Morthex attack. This is coordinated. The chamber erupted in chaotic voices. Some council members called for Taiwan's immediate execution, while others demanded they hear him out. Princess Yenji raised her hand, and a pulse of energy silenced the room. She fixed all 4 eyes on Taiwan's face, studying him intently. I believe you, she said finally, but my people may not. Lord Du-hyun, stand down. Allow Commander Han to contact his vessel. This is treason, Du-hyun hissed. The ancient texts warn us about the stars. The ancient texts also speak of wisdom and judgment, the princess countered. She turned to Taiwan. You may use our communication array to contact your people. General Sun Ho will escort you. As the emergency session disbanded, Taiwan caught Lord Du-hyun whispering to several royal guards. The look Du-hyun gave him was filled with pure hatred. That night, after successfully establishing contact with the Earth rescue vessel and arranging a diplomatic meeting, Taiwan retired to his quarters. The Earth ship had agreed to remain in high orbit until formal permission to land was granted. It was progress, but Taiwan still felt uneasy. He was preparing for sleep when his trained senses detected a subtle shift in the air. The environmental controls had changed. Taiwan dropped to the floor just as a poison dart embedded itself in the wall where his head had been. 3 shadowy figures moved from hidden panels in the walls. They wore stealth suits that bent light around them, making them difficult to track. One carried a crystalline blade that hummed with energy. The alien dies tonight, one whispered in Velarin, the words just barely caught by Taiwan's translator. His military training took over. Taiwan rolled under the first attacker's swing, coming up with the heavy metal water pitcher from his bedside. He smashed it into the assassin's face, sending the Velarin stumbling backward. The second attacker fired another dart, which Taiwan barely dodged. He grabbed the decorative wall hanging, a tapestry of metallic threads, and yanked it down onto his attacker. The third assassin was more skilled. The blade came within millimeters of Taiwan's throat, before he managed to catch the attacker's wrist. They grappled, crashing into furniture. The Velaran was stronger, but Taiwan had combat experience against various alien species during his military career. He managed to flip the assassin over his shoulder, but the move left him vulnerable to the first attacker, who had recovered. Taiwan felt a sharp pain as a blade sliced across his back. The door to his quarters suddenly exploded inward in a shower of crystal fragments. Princess Yunji stood in the doorway, her body glowing with powerful energy. She wasn't wearing her royal garments, but a form-fitting combat suit that enhanced her natural abilities. "Treason!" she shouted, and waves of energy pulsed from her hands. Two of the assassins were thrown against the wall with bone-crushing force. The third managed to dodge and made a desperate lunge for Taiwan, blade aimed at his heart. Taiwan twisted, but knew he wouldn't avoid the strike completely. Then a flash of light intercepted the blade. The princess had thrown herself between them, deflecting the attack with a shield of pure energy that extended from her palm. With her other hand, she touched the assassin's chest. There was a pulse of blue light, and the attacker collapsed, unconscious. "Are you injured?" she asked Taiwan, her voice tight with concern. "Nothing serious," he replied, pressing his hand to the cut on his back. "How did you know?" "I didn't trust Du Hyun's calm acceptance of my decision," she said, examining the fallen assassins. "I placed guards I trust outside your door, but they were drugged." She knelt beside one of the unconscious attackers and removed their mask. "One of Du Hyun's personal guard. This is all the proof I need." "What happens now?" Taiwan asked. Princess Yunji's 4 eyes glowed with determination. "Now we prepare for both war and peace. The Morthex from beyond our system, your people from beyond the stars, and traitors from within my court." She helped Taiwan to his feet. "It seems your arrival has broken open secrets long buried." "I'm sorry," Taiwan said sincerely. "Don't be," she replied, her expression softening. Perhaps it was time for Velora to remember that we cannot hide from the universe forever. The grand hall of the Crystal Palace had never hosted beings from another world. Its soaring ceilings, designed to capture and amplify light, cast rainbow patterns across the assembled dignitaries. On one side stood 20 Velaran nobles in their ceremonial armor, each piece alive and responsive to its wearer. On the other side stood 20 human officers in the dark blue uniforms of the United Earth Command. Admiral Kim Ji-young stepped forward. She was a woman of medium height with short gray hair and the confident bearing of someone who had commanded starships for decades. Her gaze was steady as she faced Princess Yunji. "We came for our officer," Ji-young stated firmly. "Not for war." Princess Yunji stood tall, all 4 of her eyes focused on the human admiral. Her royal regalia pulsed with subtle light, responding to her emotional state. "Commander Han Taiwan crashed on our world uninvited," she replied, her translator converting her musical language to human speech. "Yet we have treated him with respect and dignity." Taiwan stood slightly to the side, uncomfortable being the center of this diplomatic tension. His month on Velora had changed him. He no longer saw this world as simply an alien planet to study, but as a society with its own beauty and complexity. Lord Du Hyun, recently stripped of his military authority, but still a powerful noble, watched from the shadows. His attempted assassination of Taiwan had failed, but the princess had kept the matter quiet, preferring to handle the betrayal internally rather than display division before the humans. "Our scans indicate your world is preparing for conflict," Admiral Ji-young continued. "We detected weapons platforms activating across your planet. The Morthex threat grows," Princess Yunji explained. "Our preparations are not aimed at Earth." The Admiral's expression showed skepticism. "We request permission to extract Commander Han and depart your system peacefully." Before the princess could answer, the crystal walls of the palace flashed deep red. Alarm tones echoed through the chamber, and the Velaran security officers touched their communication devices simultaneously. General Sunho rushed into the hall, his face grim. "Your Highness, Morthex vessels have broken through the outer defense grid. They will reach orbit within minutes. The timing couldn't have been worse. With humans already in their system and tension high, the Morthex had launched their most ambitious attack yet. On the large display that materialized in the center of the hall, everyone could see the swarm of enemy ships approaching the planet. "How many?" the princess asked. "Over 300 vessels," General Sunho replied. 3 times larger than any previous attack. Admiral Jae-young studied the display with professional interest. "Those are biological ships," she observed, "similar to species we've encountered in the Centauri system." Tae-won saw an opportunity. He stepped forward, positioning himself between his people and the princess. "We have a common enemy," he said clearly, looking from Princess Yeonji to Admiral Jae-young. "Let's fight together." The human officers exchanged glances. The Velorans murmured among themselves. "You propose a military alliance?" Admiral Jae-young asked carefully. "I do," Tae-won confirmed. "Admiral, the UEC Pathfinder is equipped with tactical systems that could be effective against the Morthex. Princess, your biological technology and knowledge of the enemy could give us the edge we need." Princess Yeonji considered for only a moment. "The survival of my world takes priority over ancient fears," she declared. She extended her hand toward Admiral Jae-young, a human gesture she had learned from Tae-won. "Will Earth stand with Valora?" The palace shook as the first Morthex bombardment hit the planetary shields. Small particles of crystal drifted down from the ceiling. Admiral Jae-young clasped the princess's 6-fingered hand. "We will. Commander Han, coordinate our defense efforts." What followed was the most intense 3 days of Tae-won's life. The Morthex attacked relentlessly, targeting the capital city with particular fury. Their ships, living vessels that resembled massive insects, disgorged thousands of drone fighters that probed the Veloran defenses for weaknesses. The human ship Pathfinder moved into a defensive position above the capital. Its advanced targeting systems provided data that allowed the Velorans to predict Morthex attack patterns. In return, Veloran engineers quickly adapted their biological technology to the human ship, enhancing its shields with living crystal that could regenerate after impacts. Tae-won worked around the clock, shuttling between the Veloran command center and the human tactical team. His unique position, understanding both cultures, made him invaluable as a coordinator. By the second day, the initial Morthex advantage had been blunted. The combined human-Veloran defense forced the attackers to adjust their tactics. "They're adapting," Tae-won observed in the war room, where Princess Yeonji and Admiral Jae-young stood before a 3-dimensional battle display. "But so are we. Their hive mind is powerful but slow to innovate," the princess explained. "Your human unpredictability confuses them." Admiral Jae-young nodded. "And your biological technology gives us sustainability we've never had before. My engineers are already talking about applications for Earth defense systems." On the 3rd day, the tide turned decisively. A bold plan conceived by Tae-won and executed by combined human-Veloran forces targeted what appeared to be the Morthex command ship. The massive vessel, 3 times larger than the others, attempted to flee but was crippled by a precision strike from the Pathfinder. Without central coordination, the Morthex swarm fell into disarray. By nightfall, the remaining enemy ships were retreating from the system, the first time in recorded Veloran history that the Morthex had been driven back. The capital city had suffered damage. Crystal towers had fallen, gardens were destroyed, and many Velorans and a few humans had lost their lives in the fighting. But they had won. Tae-won found Princess Yeonji standing amid the rubble of what had once been a beautiful plaza. Her royal armor was scratched and dented, and she looked exhausted but resolute. "Your plan worked," she said as he approached. "The Morthex retreat." "Our plan," Tae-won corrected. "It was the combination of our knowledge that made the difference." Around them, human and Veloran medical teams worked side by side, treating the injured. Engineers from both species were already discussing how to rebuild the damaged structures, exchanging ideas and technology. In one day, we learned more about defensive systems than we had in a century of fighting alone. Princess Yunji observed. And your admiral tells me they have gained insights that would have taken Earth decades to develop independently. The setting sun cast a golden light across the damaged city. Despite the destruction, there was a sense of hope in the air that Taiwan had not felt before. Princess Yunji took his hand, a gesture she had learned from him but had now made her own. Her 4 eyes met his 2 with an intensity that transcended their biological differences. Perhaps the stars sent you to us, she said softly. Not as conqueror, but as ally. Taiwan squeezed her hand gently. Perhaps they sent us to each other. In the distance, he could see Admiral Jiayang speaking with General Sun Ho, their earlier suspicions replaced by professional respect. Human crew members were being guided through the city by curious Velerans, while Veleran scientists eagerly examined human technology. What happens now? Taiwan asked. Princess Yunji looked up at the evening sky, where the first stars were becoming visible. Now we must decide if Valora will remain hidden, or if we will join the greater community of worlds. It's a big step, Taiwan acknowledged. Yes, she agreed, but perhaps it is time. The ancient fear that kept us isolated may have protected us once, but it also limited us. She turned to face him fully. Will you help us? Will you be the bridge between our worlds? Before Taiwan could answer, a group of Veleran children approached them, looking curiously at the human. One brave child stepped forward and offered Taiwan a glowing crystal flower, a symbol of new beginnings in Veleran culture. As he accepted the gift, Taiwan knew his life had changed forever. His crash landing had become something far more significant than a simple accident. It had become the beginning of a new era for 2 civilizations. Taiwan adjusted the translator implant behind his ear, still marveling at how the Veleran biotechnology had seamlessly integrated with his nervous system. The small living device pulsed gently, translating the complex 4-tone Veleran language directly into his brain. It was just one of countless technological exchanges that had transformed both human and Veleran societies in the 6 months since their alliance began. He sat in his new office in the rebuilt east wing of the Crystal Palace. The room reflected his unique position, half furnished with Earth items sent from home, half decorated with Veleran living technology. The large window offered a spectacular view of the capital city, now restored and expanded with new buildings that combined architectural styles from both worlds. Ambassador Han, his human assistant, called from the doorway. Your transmission window to Earth is ready. Taiwan nodded and activated his communication terminal. Unlike traditional human computers, this one was a hybrid. Earth digital systems enhanced with Veleran biological components. The screen came to life, displaying the familiar Galactic Reddit interface that had been established as the first interspecies social platform. Taiwan's fingers hovered over the input surface. For months, security protocols had prevented him from sharing details about the unprecedented alliance. Today, those restrictions had finally been lifted. He began to type. Galactic REDDIT, user, crash-landed diplomat. Posted. Galactic date 37/82/45. The words appeared in both human standard and Veleran script. Taiwan smiled at his username. A joke suggested by Admiral Jiayang after his diplomatic status had been formalized. Finally allowed to share my experience as first human contact with the Veleran Empire. He continued typing. It's been 6 months since the joint fleet drove back the Morthex collective. He paused to attach several images of the new hybrid vessels developed by combined human-Veleran engineering teams. The ships were beautiful, sleek human designs enhanced with living Veleran crystal that glowed with inner light. The vessels could heal themselves when damaged and adapted to space conditions in ways that purely mechanical ships never could. As Taiwan composed his message, his mind drifted back to the incredible chain of events that had followed the defeat of the Morthex attack. What had begun as a desperate alliance had quickly evolved into something far more profound. Earth scientists had been astonished by Velaran biological technology, while Velaran engineers had been equally impressed by human digital systems and space travel expertise. Research teams from both worlds worked day and night, combining their knowledge in ways that accelerated development beyond what either species could have achieved alone. But the most surprising development had come just 1 month after the battle. A Velaran deep space monitoring station had detected signals from another civilization, the first contact with a third intelligent species. Then another was discovered, and another. Within weeks, 7 different alien civilizations had been identified, all within traveling distance. The universe, it seemed, was teeming with intelligent life. Most species had developed in isolation, like the Velarans, or had limited contact with only 1 or 2 neighbors, as humans had. None had established anything like a true galactic community. Until now. Tae-Won continued his post. Princess, now regent, Yunji addressed the Galactic Council yesterday, with Earth joining as the newest member species. The other civilizations couldn't hide their shock when they realized how quickly humans and Velarans had integrated our technologies. He smiled at the memory of the historic first meeting of what was now called the Galactic Council. Representatives from 9 different species had gathered in the newly constructed Unity Dome on Velora. When Princess Yunji, now elevated to regent after her parent voluntarily stepped down, had entered with the Earth delegation, the other aliens had been visibly stunned. Some species had been spacefaring for centuries longer than either humans or Velarans, yet of technological integration that the Human-Velaran alliance had developed in just 6 months. The Morthex have requested peace talks for the first time in their history. Tae-Won typed. Turns out they feared us more than we feared them. This had been perhaps the most surprising development. After their defeat, the Morthex had withdrawn to their home system. 3 months later, they had sent an envoy, not to attack, but to communicate. Through difficult translations, they had explained that their attacks had been motivated by fear. They had detected both Velaran and human signals and believed a powerful alliance was forming against them. Their preemptive strikes had been intended as self-defense. Now, the former enemy was cautiously engaging in trade negotiations. Tae-Won had been instrumental in these talks, having learned that understanding different species was his greatest talent. A soft chime from his desk announced a visitor. The door slid open to reveal Regent Yunji. She wore simplified royal attire, her floating crown reduced to a single band of light that hovered above her head. All 4 of her eyes brightened when she saw him. Ambassador Han, she said warmly, using his formal title but with the familiar musical tone that only he could fully appreciate. Are you preparing your famous post for Galactic Reddit? Tae-Won stood and bowed slightly. Despite their friendship, she was still the planetary ruler. Just finishing it, Your Eminence. I was recounting our journey. She glided into the room and glanced at his screen. Still amazed by the translator implant, she asked, noting that part of his draft. It's revolutionary, he admitted. Earth medical scientists are already adapting the technology to help people with hearing and speech disabilities. And we have begun implementing your digital security protocols across our biological networks, she replied. A fair exchange. They stood together at the window, looking out at the city. In the harbor, a new ship was being prepared. The Harmony, the first true joint venture designed for long-range exploration. Its mission would take human and Velaran crews to the far reaches of known space, seeking more civilizations to join their growing alliance. Did you include the story about my face when I first saw you? Yunji asked with the Velaran equivalent of a smile, a subtle illumination of her skin that rippled outward from her core. Of course, Tae-Won laughed. That moment of shock is now historic. He returned to his terminal and added, for those asking, yes, the initial shock on the princess's face when she first saw me climb out of my crashed ship was priceless. Wish I had recorded it. Who knew that one awkward moment would change galactic history? Regent Yunji read his words and made a musical sound that Tae-Won had learned was laughter. If someone had told me that day that a strange two-eyed being from the stars would transform our entire civilization, I would have had them examined for mental disturbances. And if someone had told me my navigation failure would lead to all this, I would have thought they were crazy, Todd 1 agreed. A projection appeared in the center of the room, a three-dimensional map of nearby star systems, with 9 different colored points representing the member species of the newly formed Galactic Council. Lines connected the worlds, showing established trade and diplomatic routes. The Council has approved the deep space mission, Yun-Ji informed him. They want you to lead it. Tae-Won looked at her in surprise. Me? But my position is here, as ambassador. You are more than an ambassador now, she said seriously. You are the symbol of what can happen when different worlds come together. The other species respect that.